From the land of conjurers, flying through the internet to your device like a UAP, hauntingly unexplained and downright weird, this is the witching hours, and we are ready to take off in the flash of an eye. Good evening to one and all, wherever and whenever you are listening to this program. I am Jonathan Frost, and joining me, as always, the medium Jenny Lee. How are you doing, Jenny?
I'm here, and I think Twitch is twitching.
Twitch is twitching?
For me, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
It put me in an ad for like 5 minutes, and then
Oh, no.
it's like really slow. We'll just refresh, and it'll be all right.
You know, that's perfect to happen right after we go through all the effort of having new internets.
Yes. It's Twitch's fault.
Anyway.
I know it.
Yeah. Twitch's fault. I do want to say thank you, hoaxers, and thank you, CMC, for the resubs. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, a lot to get into tonight. Just want to say, want to get weird. We're ready to get started. This is your home for the paranormal. We're all things paranormal, supernatural, the unexplained. If you haven't, and most people have, if you're listening and you haven't gone over to our YouTube, go over there, check it out. You can find all of our past shows. All after tonight, 69 episodes of The Witching Hours will be up over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. So go over there, give us a sub, give us a review. It would greatly help grow the channel, which is what we're all about. So thank you so much. We appreciate everyone who's coming in to hanging out with us tonight. Welcome in. Welcome in. You ready to get some news going, Jenny?
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Sorry, I cut you off.
I was saying thanks, CMC, for the he gifted me a sub, so I don't have to see ads on our own channel. Thanks.
I was messing around with stuff today. I hope I didn't change something up. So I did do the sub badges. We have a 2.5 year sub badge now.
Ooh,
I don't know if anyone's qualified for that one yet. I'll have to look through chat at the sub badges.
Hoaxer said he's number one.
Okay. And then we have a new sub badge that I guess the last one I have is for 3 years. So that'll be coming up soon.
Nice.
So we got that going on. So the news. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to say tonight, I had marked down here. Today we hit 30,000 views on YouTube.
Nice.
So I just want to thank everyone. I know a lot of that comes from all of our wonderful friends in the community. So I want to thank everyone for helping us achieve that over on YouTube. We really appreciate it. News today. I don't even know if I talked to you about this today, but Shelley Duvall died at the age of 75.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, the actress known for her roles in Popeye and the horror classic The Shining has passed away. As a child, I was completely obsessed with, I'm going to probably get the name wrong here, but it was like Shelley Duvall's theater that she had on HBO, which I actually have on DVD. I got one year because I was obsessed with it when I was a child, especially the Jack and the Beanstalk. So it was sad news today to hear that she had passed. Yeah, Fairy Tale Theater. There we go, Fairy Tale Theater.
Yeah.
The Jack and the Beanstalk was my favorite, and of course, The Shining, one of probably the best films in my opinion ever created. So
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, sad news. And then another story that just confirms some of my thoughts, which is night owls' cognitive function superior to early risers. Studies suggest the idea that night owls who don't go to bed until the early hours struggle to get anything done during the day may have to be revised. It turns out that staying up late could be good for our brain power, as research suggests that people who identify as night owls could be sharper than those who go to bed early.
I feel like you handpicked this story here.
It showed up in my news feed.
When you were up last night at like 3 o'clock in the morning?
No. It could be the algorithm. Researchers led by academics at Imperial College London studied data from the UK Biobank study on more than 26,000 people who had completed intelligence reasoning, reaction time, and memory tests. Then they examined how participants slept duration, quality, and chronotype affected brain performance. They found that those who stay up late and those classed as intermediate had superior cognitive function, while morning larks had the lowest scores. Going to bed late is strongly associated with creative types, artists, authors. You could be an Arthur.
Anybody named Arthur.
That's an author. Yeah.
Got it, guys.
And musicians known, tend to be fit that field. But while politicians such as Margaret Thatcher, Winston Churchill, and Barack Obama famously seem to thrive on little sleep, the study found that sleep duration is important for brain function, with those getting between 7 to 9 hours of shut-eye each night before performing best in cognitive tests. I just want to say, handpicked, like you said, I think there's probably a correlation there between people who get up early and those who don't get enough sleep.
Yes, I think.
And so
part of it, yeah.
I wonder if the data was skewed there, because people who are getting up super early and then going to bed not as early as they probably should, unlike me who goes to bed really late but still gets my sleep in. Anyway, well, kind of. It's hard to get enough sleep.
Yeah.
In the world we live in, like we were talking about earlier, with the internet, with so many things vying for our attention, it gets more difficult. NASA astronauts from Boeing's Starliner may be stuck in space until August. 2 astronauts from Boeing's troubled Starliner capsule may have to remain in space until the middle of August, as engineers continue to work through technical problems that prevented their return in June. Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore have been on board the International Space Station since the 6th of June, after the first crewed docking of the next generation spacecraft. The test mission was scheduled to last about a week, but Starliner's undocking was delayed several times as faulty thrusters and then a series of small helium leaks raised safety concerns. On Wednesday, NASA announced that it was still performing tests to ensure the capsule would perform as expected, and although the space agency was confident the craft would be safe for an emergency evacuation, mission managers were not ready to schedule its departure. Some of the data suggests optimistically maybe it's by the end of July, but we'll just follow the data each step at a time, Steve Stitch, NASA's commercial crew program manager, said at a lunchtime press conference.
Actually, I got a quick question for you. Are we supposed to be recording this through StreamYard?
We can. We don't. I have it set up to, but we'll be able to get it off Twitch no matter what.
Okay, I was just making sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Typically we do, but yeah. So I just wanted to say that's probably one of my biggest fears. I think going to space for me, it would be wonderful, but I don't know if I could do it. But imagine getting up there and then realizing that you're stuck.
Yeah.
That would be pretty tremendous. So right now they're planning on trying to get out there by August, and there's also a planned docking by SpaceX. So there's a possibility that if something is wrong with their shuttle, with the Starliner, that one of Elon Musk's shuttles could grab them when they dock.
They're gonna send.
Well, they're coming anyway. They're supposed to be going to the space station. So if they're still there and they can't get out, they gotta ride home. Hopefully,
they'll just send a Tesla up there and pick them up.
Yeah.
Less than Huey Lewis in the news on the way back.
Gonna go back in time. Vancouver Island cryptozoologists continue looking for fabled sea serpent. A group of Vancouver Island cryptid enthusiasts looking to prove the existence of a mythical sea creature are asking people to keep their eyes peeled while on the water this summer. Jason Walton, president of the Victoria-based British Columbia Scientific Cryptozoology Club, said recorded sightings of the Cadborosaurus It's like the Cadbury egg dinosaur. I don't know. I've never heard of one before.
Sounds delicious.
Cadborosaurus or Caddy go back to the 1930s, but tales of sea serpents in the waters of the Pacific Northwest go back hundreds of years. Sea captains had put in their logbooks when they saw these, and they would not lie in logbooks, especially when there are 100 sailors aboard, said Walton. The pictures have them dating back to the 1700s. Walton and others from the Cryptozoology Club started Caddy Scan in 1999, where they set up a number of cameras that face the ocean along the island. The story goes on, but essentially it looks like the sightings of Caddy look very much like the Loch Ness monster or Nessie. Long neck with like a head that's kind of the same reporting.
We had one of those in Chesapeake Bay for a while too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
While the weather warms up and more people are spending time on the ocean, Walton asks swimmers, sailors, and seafarers to be vigilant and to report possible Caddy sightings to sightings at bcscc.ca. So if you're out in the Pacific Northwest and you see caddies swimming around out there, make sure you report it and get a good picture and put it on Discord.
Yes.
And that was the news.
There you go, CMC. Next time you're up there, get a sighting of that caddy.
Up in Vancouver.
The Cadbury sea monster.
The chocolate with I don't even know what is the inside a Cadbury egg. I don't know what that is. It's just sugar.
It's sugary goodness.
Yeah, but it's wonderful. Whatever it is.
Yep. Is it time for the moon update?
Yeah, let's go ahead and knock out the moon update.
Okay.
Let's bring in Alyson, the Priestess of Wonderland, to tell us what the heck's going on with the
hot
moon.
July. Hi, Alyson.
Hello, everybody. I'm okay. How are you guys?
Doing all right.
Well, we're with you since we're pretty local to each other, and we're dealing with this crazy humid heat craziness that's happening. So,
yeah, just stay inside.
Yeah,
yeah,
and get your AC fixed, I guess.
Yes.
We're okay. We're not in like emergency mode yet, but it's definitely like someone needs to
working.
Look at
it's just not. Yeah, it's not its best.
Oh, goodness. Well, we're here. July feels good. July feels okay.
Moon stuff is good.
Yeah.
Good.
So I'm going to have to backtrack a little bit because we're on July 10th and we're right we just started the Cancer new moon cycle, which was July 5th last week. And also that last week, Mercury moved into Leo, so we're starting to feel that Leo energy, even though we're in Cancer season.
As Leo does, right?
Yeah.
We're just going to take everybody else's.
I'm coming up. Like, don't forget about me. So Mercury moved into Leo on July 2nd. And Mercury is the planet of communication. So... And Leo is like wants to be the center of attention. It's kind of, I feel like Mercury and Leo brings things that to the surface that you need to talk about, that need to be center stage. But at the same time on July 2nd, Neptune went retrograde. And this now means that Saturn, Pluto, and Neptune are all retrograde. And it feels... you're starting to feel that like kind of stuck energy that we're going to be feeling even more next month once some other planets go retrograde. And it's kind of, I've been kind of looking at retrograde-apalooza as like this kind of embracing the lazy days of summer to try to have a positive spin on it, because it's not necessarily about moving forward with goals or setting intentions. It's just about kind of sitting and integrating and
the air conditioning
in the air conditioner and trying to just soak up the sun, soak up whatever is coming up for you. Because Saturn is the planet of boundaries and restrictions. So we're reevaluating what we allow to enter our energetic space, our personal space, and setting boundaries that need to be set, or breaking down old walls that need to be taken down that aren't serving you anymore. Pluto is the planet of transformation. So it's slowing down any part of like evolution that you might be going through, or things that you might be uncovering about yourself, and just kind of reevaluating if you have been starting to shift and change in big aspects of your life. And then now with Neptune retrograde on top of that, I see Neptune as like hopes and dreams, and it kind of like when we're when it's retrograde, there is kind of this like hopelessness feeling. And that's why I'm saying I think it's good to just kind of settle into the summer and take some days off if you can take some days off, take a vacation if you can take a vacation, and just like just simply be. It's so hot, your body wastes so much energy like trying to cool itself down. Like just relax and settle into it, because fighting something and striving for things that just aren't going to move forward right now is wasting energy. Kind
That
of.
sounds good. Because
And
I've been feeling like I've been struggling, like, because I'm like, oh, I don't want to do anything.
yeah, don't do anything. If you don't
Okay,
feel like
good.
doing anything, just
Allison
don't
said
do
I don't
anything.
have to do anything. Everybody hear that?
But
We should have done this show earlier in the week, so I wasn't out there in the yard all day yesterday.
So then on July 5th, we had our Cancer new moon, and Cancer season and Cancer energy is the divine mother, the loving, caring, nurturing, taking care of yourself. So I look at Cancer season as like a time to like, because we're reevaluating all our boundaries, our dreams, our transformation and changes. Like, how are you going to take care of yourself so that you can achieve those goals? Because we can dream big and we can be very hopeful, and not necessarily think about, are there enough hours in the day for me to do this? Do I have enough money to do this? Like, are your dreams realistic? Can you like we all want to achieve these things, but like are you really allowing enough time for you to do all of these things? You have to take care of yourself. You have to take days off. You have to take breaks. You have to take vacations. You have to relax and breathe. We can't just always be go, 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 go. So that's what Cancer season teaches us.
Good.
Now
I'm liking it.
now we're in the middle of, or not middle, we're a week into the Cancer moon cycle. We've got our first quarter moon. And when we have a first quarter, this is energy is increasing. Now we're starting to like take our first steps towards whatever intentions we set on the new moon. Hopefully they were self-care related. Nothing's really going on this week other than today, Venus moved into Leo. So we're getting more of that Leo energy. Leo's the planet of love and relationships and how we interact with people. And again, I feel like it brings this like center stage kind of action to relationships. Things might be coming up and you might have like a spotlight on things going on in your relationship, or you just want to be the center of attention. Or relationships want to be the center of attention.
Dang Leos.
I know. So next week, the July 15th through the 21st, we're going to have our second Capricorn full moon at the end of the week. So this is shifting us back to our normal dualities that we have with our new moons and full moons. So in Cancer season, we have a new moon in Cancer, and then we've got a Capricorn full moon, and we always have these two different energies. So Capricorn wants success and achievement. Cancer wants loving, caring, nurturing. So it's, how do you balance these two energies? How do you work and how do you take care of yourself? And we always have these two opposite energies to kind of balance each other out. And for the last year, we've kind of been shifted a little bit, and the energies have been a little bit different. So now we're shifting back into like our regular moon cycle with this second Capricorn full moon.
Good.
And so like last month with our Capricorn full moon, we were kind of in Gemini season reevaluating work versus play, success and achievement versus the total other side of that. Whereas now we're thinking about how do we achieve while taking care of ourselves because of that Cancer energy. So it's kind of reevaluating your goals to include that self-care that I was talking about earlier. Then as we make our way into July 22nd through the 28th, Mercury's moving into Virgo. So we're stepping a little bit away from Leo, and Mercury going into Virgo is going to set us up for the retrograde happening August 5th. Nobody likes a Mercury retrograde.
Nope.
It's coming, and it's coming during Leo season, and I don't think we're going to like it. But Virgo is a sign of reorganizing and restructuring how we communicate. So hopefully we're all going to learn something about we all need help with communication. Our society needs help with communication. So how can we better communicate more? How can we settle arguments? We've got so many big things happening in the world. How can we hear each other out?
That sounds good. Anyway. Yeah. Positive spin on the Mercury retrograde.
And so I think that's going to kind of, the last weeks of July are going to set us up for Mercury retrograde starting August 5th and into the rest of Leo season.
Goodness gracious. Next month.
The day that I go back to work starts Mercury retrograde.
Oh gosh. So it ends. Yeah, it ends August 28th. August 5th through August 28th. Oh, yep.
Oh, bueno.
Just remember to use your words
carefully. Well, I guess next month's moon update is going to be a little different than this month's.
I try to think, like, do I just not like this because I'm a Leo and I'm like, I don't want a Mercury retrograde right now.
How dare you?
Or does everybody feel like this? I don't know.
Don't you know who we are this Leo season? Yeah. Well, all right. Well, at least this month seems all right.
Yeah. I feel good about this month. I don't like Neptune being retrograde because I love Neptune, dreamy, hopeful energy. But
when does that come out of retrograde?
Not until November, I think.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
Oh, December. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. Okay. Well, just hold on to your hopes and dreams, people.
Yep.
Hold on to them.
It'll come back around. All right, Alyson. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us our update.
Yeah, I guess we'll have you back during Mercury retrograde. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
if that works out.
If technology holds up.
Thank you, Alyson.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. So there's your moon update for July. And now we'll get on to our guest for this evening, Alex Matsuo. He's a paranormal researcher, social media influencer, and author. Not an Arthur, but an author.
Yes.
She is the founder of the Association of Paranormal Study and runs the Spooky Stuff. If it's weird, spooky, unusual, scary, macabre, or haunted, she wants to write and talk about it. So I have a feeling we'll get along fine. We have met and talked a little bit with Alex before. Alex was recently seen on the 3rd season of Haunted Hospitals in episode 12, titled It Followed Me Home. The episode can be seen on Discovery Plus. She has also been seen on Travel Channel's Most Terrifying Places in America. In addition, she is the host of the podcast, The Spooky Stuff. Alex has written several books about the paranormal, including Women of the Paranormal Volume 1, A Brief History, which we definitely want to get into tonight, The Hamptonville Hauntings, One Bed Over, A Hospital Haunting, The Brave Mortal's Guide to Ghost Hunting, The Haunting of the 10th Avenue Theater, and More Than Ghosts, A Guide to Working Residential Cases in the Paranormal Field, and The Haunted Actor. Alex has also contributed to Haunted Magazine, Joy Taylor's Morbid Curious, and The Feminine Macabre. Alex holds an MA in theater from San Diego State University and currently resides in Arlington, Virginia. Please welcome to the show, Alex Matsuo. How are you doing, Alex?
I'm good. How are you all doing?
Hi, Alex.
Doing
Nice to see
well.
you again.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
Alex
Yeah, we
was
got
our table mate at the
Yeah.
Hanover Tavern Paracon. Yes.
Yep.
Where
yeah, that was
I
a fun time.
where
It
I bought
was.
my copy of Women in the Paranormal.
Hey,
I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm going to talk to you about it tonight.
Yeah.
sweet. Let's do it.
Yeah, you have the lottery system for your book reading, right? So it's just a matter of picking the name out of the hat.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. I do everything with the lottery system apparently. But anyway,
Yeah,
is
the
it hot
lottery
up in is it hot up in Arlington too?
Oh my gosh, yeah. It was really we got a little bit of relief yesterday cuz we had a storm come through, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's been ungodly hot. Like it's been I have a lot of derogative descriptions to describe how hot it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Been
Yeah.
disgusting.
We when we had met you, we were living closer to Northern Virginia. We were out towards Charlottesville, kind of,
Oh yeah.
and we've moved back. We're just kind of south of Richmond now. And I was looking at the weather yesterday, and I was like, it's 3 degrees cooler where we used to
If we
live.
would have lived there still, it's 3 degrees cooler.
Anyway.
Nice.
Well, there's a lot we want to get in with you tonight, and luckily, we have some time. I guess the first thing I wanted to talk about was where we usually start, which is what got you into the spooky stuff.
That is a good question. Yeah, so I had experiences when I was a kid. Fairly light experiences, not super traumatic. That didn't come in until I was 19, and that story was what inspired One Bed Over, a hospital haunting. But throughout my life, my mother really discouraged any sort of like secular interests, and the paranormal was one of them. And I grew up in the age of Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark? I was really in unsolved mysteries, and I just really wanted to learn more about it. And it seems like the harder my mom pushed for me to stay away from it, it just kind of got me more interested. And like I mentioned, I had experiences too that I couldn't quite explain, and I wanted to learn more about it. After the incident that inspired One Bed Over, which very, very short, high level version description of that, I was in a really bad car accident, ended up with a spirit attachment from a gentleman who had passed away in the trauma room where we were both being worked on. We weren't in the same accident, but the accident happened on New Year's Eve in the rain in San Diego. So, hospitals were full and we were sharing trauma rooms.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was really the incident that really got me into wanting to get into paranormal research, not just, you're 16 hopping in the car. And I grew up in San Diego, like 5 minutes away from Old Town. So, Whaley House and, those, of course, you had to, when you're doing that. But yeah, so after I got my master's degree, that was what, I really wanted to start a team and help people, because with the One Bed Over situation, this was 2005, 2006. The paranormal community that exists now did not exist back then. And getting help for any sort of paranormal situation, especially in Southern California, was near impossible. So I wanted to be that resource. So really, it's kind of just a mix of little experiences, a traumatic experience, and then just kind of just pursuing the different areas of the spooky realm. And that's what brought me here today.
So what was one of your lighter experiences as a kid?
Ooh, let's see. One of my favorites was I was a theater kid. I mean, you mentioned my bio. I have an MA in theater. I've been doing theater since I was about 11 or 12. I was in a production of Peter Pan at the Spreckles Theater in downtown San Diego. And the way this theater was set up was the backstage. You had to go up the stairs to go to the dressing rooms. And there was a I didn't know about the story at the time, but when I had gone out, I went out of my dressing room because we were at places and I was getting ready to, start the show. We all had our costumes on. I saw this ballerina stretching all over the railing of the balcony. And I thought, okay, that's weird because I didn't recognize her. So I'm like, okay, I don't know if she's in the show. But also the other part was usually when you rent a theater, like you're the only one there. There's not like your group is the only one there. Like you're not really sharing the space really,
Yeah.
so I didn't recognize the girl. She wasn't in any sort of costume. She was wearing a leotard, pink tights, hair in a bun, and she was just stretching, had her leg on the railing, and she was doing her stretches. And I looked over and I was like, huh, that's weird. And I turned back to my dressing room, and then I looked back and she was not quite gone, but she was like in the end stages of fading away.
Wow.
And then I found out that there is a ghost story about a ballerina who was tripped down the stairs by a very ambitious understudy dancer.
Oh no.
Tripped her, and she had died from that incident.
Wow.
So I just thought that was super interesting, and I was like, oh, that's okay. And I was about 13 or 14 with that. So yeah, that was definitely one of the lighter ones, and like one of the fun ones. And
yeah,
I saw the ballerina fade away, and I'm like, oh, that's even weirder. Okay, well, I guess I got to go start my show now.
Yeah, I guess she's not in the Peter Pan production.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Wow.
So your experience with the fella from the hospital sounds like it was a bad experience.
Yes. Yeah, and I continue to go back and forth about that experience too, because I also recognize that we process traumatic events, and there's my cat, walking by. I also realize that we process traumatic events in different ways, and I'm like, maybe he was a projection of my survivor's guild and just processing. Very, very, very high level version. I was in a bad car accident on New Year's Eve that resulted in me getting hit by a car, tossed over the guardrail because it was on a freeway ramp, and I fell 25 feet onto the road below.
Wow.
And had to go to the hospital. Spoiler.
Yeah.
I had to go to the hospital when
You don't say.
things like that happen. And while I was on the table, and my blood pressure was extremely low, I had internal bleeding amongst broken bones. They didn't want to give me any pain meds because, you don't do that if someone's blood pressure is really low.
Yeah.
So anytime they were moving me or touching me, I was in excruciating pain. So much so that I ended up having an out-of-body experience in the trauma room. And I think my body was just like, this is too much. Peace. Whatever was in control of my senses was like, peace out. So I saw myself floating over my body. I was standing at the foot of the bed watching them work on me. And there was a gentleman in the trauma room with me who was wearing leather, but it was very bloody. I do remember just a lot of just a lot of blood. And one of the nurses, this was before the OBE, one of the nurses saw that I was watching him because, you're in excruciating pain and you look over and there's somebody dying next to you. And it's like, great. So she put like a frosted glass between us, but then it's like, okay, I just see a red cloud now. Okay, this isn't much better. And I could hear him screaming too. So that's actually what made me look at him in the first place. But yeah, so as I was standing at the foot of my bed and were the table and watching them work on me, I had also seen a gentleman at the other bed, standing at the foot of the table as well. And we locked eyes. It felt like I was going down a roller coaster, and I was back in my body and getting blood wiped off my face. And because, that's accident. And after that, I started noticing a shadow in my room, and then that shadow would take shape, and it actually ended up taking the shape of this man. And 19-year-old me, was like, oh, he must be coming up and saying hi to me or checking in on me. And it just got more aggressive. And actually it got more aggressive the more I recovered.
Wow.
So by the time like I was out of the wheelchair, like I was seeing him in my house. I could hear him speak. He was just kind of standing there menacingly looking at me. It just really just stalking me. And it got pretty bad to the point where again, paranormal community 2006, there was none.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were very conservative Christian at the time. And none of the pastors or any spiritual leaders we worked with wanted to touch this with a 10-foot pole.
Man.
Except for the Greek Orthodox Church.
Mm.
We had a friend who was connected. It was a friend / client of my mom. My mom, I guess, told her what was happening. And this woman was like, "Oh, I'll call my church," and it was the Greek Orthodox Church, and they sent over this little short old woman with 2 really big guys with her. It was like the weirdest thing. It was like they were her like bodyguards or something.
Yeah.
She really like she spoke very little English, mainly spoke Greek. She came in with holy water, olive oil, made the sign of the cross, looking for the evil eye, like as she was like dropping the oil from my forehead into the water. Walked around, did her thing, and so before she left, she had one of the guys go and get something out of her car. He comes back and it's an industrial sized spray bottle of holy water. And basically I get told to make the sign.
I mean, who doesn't have that,
Who doesn't? It's not in your arsenal, But yeah, so she gives me this industrial sized bottle of holy water and basically tells my mom, like, have her make the sign of the cross before bed every night. And it didn't solve the issue, but I felt like it put a muzzle on the guy, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like I could still feel him around, but he wasn't able to really do much. And finally, towards the end, and spoiler alert if you haven't read the book or seen the Haunted Hospitals episode, and actually the Haunted Hospital show was the reason why I wrote the book, because I wanted to make sure the accurate story was there.
Yeah.
I just basically leveled with the guy and said, like, I'm sorry that this happened to you. I'm sorry that you died and I survived. The big thing he would always say was, why you, not me? Why you, not me? But I basically said, we can't keep doing this. We're going to drive each other crazy. This isn't a good situation. I'm sorry this happened to you. So just really empathizing with him and just saying, like, I'm sorry, like not me apologizing like for anything I did, but just like, I'm sorry this happened to you. And it actually ended up resolving that way. It's the least climactic conclusion to that whole incident. Like there wasn't like a big confrontation. There wasn't like things flying off the walls or
Yeah.
I mean, well, there was at one point, but not towards the end. But it wasn't like anything huge or dramatic. It was just, hey, yeah, this sucks that this happened to you and I'm sorry, but this also can't continue and you need to move on. So it was me setting boundaries and that's what resolved it. So
wow.
That seems to be the way that those things end a lot of time. I guess if you're creating, a fiction or when you're doing a movie in Hollywood and all that stuff, you have the Exorcist scene, right? And you levitate off the bed and you spew vomit everywhere. But in real life, the experiences I've had with the paranormal, you do what you need to do and things settle down. And there's usually not like a huge climatic finish to the story. Although, I guess that would be more evidence for the people who want it. But wow, that is absolutely amazing.
Keisha said so he didn't want to cross just and see his life review. He just wanted to sulk about the incident.
Yeah.
I think that was a big thing. I think he also was really trying to understand like fairness, like why did you survive and why did I have to die? Because he would say like, why did you live and why did I die? Like why you, not me? Like, and it did send me into a little bit of an identity crisis too, especially Survivor's Guild. And I'm like, yeah, why me? Like you ask a good question, it's like, it's like you have a point, but it was but it also made me like question the value of my own life too. You know, it was one of those like, yeah, okay, maybe I wasn't supposed to go, or maybe I wasn't supposed to still be here. Like it triggered
Yeah.
a lot of like weird feelings. You know, therapy helps.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can
imagine.
I totally get that. I was in a really bad car accident when I was 18 as well. I went through the windshield. And
Oof.
so I can it does. I mean, I didn't even realize it at the time. It wasn't until like years later that I looked back and realized. Now I didn't have the issues that you had, but it wasn't until I looked back years later and I really realized that I was emotionally and like, kind of disturbed after that, that it really had changed my personality and stuff like that for a while. So, these events, you can look at them and say, like, this happened. And the person who's listening to your story goes, oh, well, that sucked. I'm sorry that happened to you. But, you don't realize until you get in there, like, what kind of effects that something that tragic can kind of have over a period of years, for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kitty.
She is wanting to be a guest on the podcast
There we
as
go.
Hi,
well.
Kitty.
There we go.
Yeah.
We have ours wandering around somewhere.
She's
she
right
might
over
make an
here.
appearance. Okay.
Yeah, she's taking a snooze right now. CMC has a question for you. I was wondering if you had heard about the haunted hospital that was the set for Grey's Anatomy and the original Amazon headquarters.
I haven't gotten a chance to really do a deep dive into it though. It's been on my list because my family lives in Seattle, and it's one of those things like it's still on my list to explore. But yeah, I have heard of it. Yeah.
Excellent. I guess while we're in the hospital mode, I kind of wanted to go in on that a little bit more. I've heard, some stories, evidently it's not that uncommon to find doctors and nurses and other kinds of people who are employed at hospitals that tend to have a lot of ghost stories. And I guess if that were to happen, that would be the place to have them. Through your research and the studies that you've done and writing the book, did you also come across is it more common to run into hauntings at a hospital than it is anywhere else?
I would agree. Hospitals are an interesting place because it's a place where there's a lot of transition happening. You know, you have life being born and you also have lives being lost. There's a lot of transition happening. There's also a lot of there's high emotions that take place in hospitals too, like immense joy, like from a childbirth, or relief from a successful surgery, or intense fear from being given like traumatic news, or sadness. Like, so there's a lot happening on multiple levels that could make a case of, hospitals being haunted, or at least being a hotspot for some sort of anomalous activity, whether that's coming from the human mind or it's coming from spirit, some other realm. There's a lot happening. And plus the fact you have so much EMF going through these hospitals. You have a lot of EMF happening, which EMF poisoning is a thing.
Mhm.
So I mean, between like the machines, MRIs, x-rays, and then the monitors, there's so much going on. And I've actually done similar explorations with haunted theaters, because it's almost a
Mhm.
very similar thing. You have a place of intense emotions. It's a place of transition. And also you have a lot of electricity. I think there's something to that formula when you have all those factors considered.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
And the thing that always struck me about hospitals, once I started thinking about that and hearing stories from doctors and stuff like that, that believed in the paranormal, because, you're always looking for the people who can bring, I don't know, some kind of like legit validation for the paranormal. Like, you're always talking about that, especially, we talk about everything on the show from, aliens to ghosts to, whatever. And so, especially when we're talking about like extraterrestrials and UFO sightings, you're always looking for people who can bring some kind of uh, credibility to their sightings and stuff like that. And so I feel like doctors are someone who can kind of do that for the paranormal when it comes to ghosts. And it always made a lot more sense to me that would be a place that would be highly active, as opposed to graveyards, which people are typically think where they're going to see ghosts. But it always kind of struck me as like maybe not that you can't find them there. I'm not saying that you can't at all, but it wouldn't be the first place that I would go to look for paranormal activity.
Yeah, no, I've always not necessarily taken issue with cemeteries and graveyards being haunted, but I feel like the last place really like where I would want to hang out would be where my remains are. Or I mean, I guess, to validate sightings that have happened there, I've always noticed that it doesn't seem to be people particularly tied to that cemetery. So I think it's like maybe it's just somebody paying respects to a friend from college or an old lover, or they're just going in and checking in and saying, giving reverence, paying respects. Yeah, and you're right. There is a level of credibility with doctors and nurses because, I mean, for the most part, doctors are. My cat is being very naughty right now.
We know all about that.
I'm like, but doctors are people of science. They are trained to think critically. They're trained to think quickly, and they deal with, especially for ER and trauma doctors, it's making fast decisions, and they're smart people. Like, they're very smart people who have to find explanations all the time. So when a doctor is coming forward and saying, I had this experience, that's enough to make someone take pause of like, oh, interesting. And then, I've had nurses on my team several times, several nurses over the years. And nurses always have the best stories too. Because they're the ones walking the halls. They're the ones doing the check-ins. And a lot of times
they're the ones that are with the people when they pass.
Yep, exactly. Yep. So I think their stories are also just as valid and credible. So it's
absolutely.
Yeah.
So in your writing about haunted hospitals, was there a specific one that is seems like it has more activity than another one?
I haven't done anything yet with, like, at least publishing. Sorry, I'm gonna distract my cat so he doesn't mess with my computer. It's just if you're a cat parent, you get it.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, and it's another one. So I got 2 cats on my desk right now.
Oh, kitties.
Yeah.
It's yes. Play with this so you don't destroy everything.
Exactly. But yeah, so there's so I did some research into the hospital in San Diego where I was at, and and I've also done research on, I've done research on the hospitals that are no longer functioning too, because haunted hospitals in general, and there's number 3 to join in. It's just chaotic right now. They don't usually do this, so there must be something about the energy here. They're all like migrating here.
This is usually what happens. They know. Cats know.
Yeah, it's so funny. But yeah, so I think, especially with hospitals that have been shut down, maybe prematurely, or maybe there was still a need. It's really made me like want to dive into like what remains after a hospital is in use. And so sorry, y'all.
No, you're fine.
And it's just really made me consider like what remains after we're done. And here comes number 3. Number 3 is now. I have cats all over my desk now. This is like both fantastic and
Journey wanted to know, how many cats do you have? 5 cats. Oh, well, there's room for 2 more to come up there.
Absolutely. Here's the other one that's now joined.
Aww, white kitty.
My husband and I we love cats. We're crazy cat parents, and we're foster fails. We're foster fails.
Yeah.
So
I'm a crazy cat person. We would probably have 5 cats if Jenny would let me. So
yes,
we only have 1 right now.
We just have 1 right now.
Nice.
One of our community members, Luce and Lars, they are also foster cat parents, so we're always hearing cat stories.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Um,
We probably have a lot more cats if they lived closer.
If they, yeah, we probably have a lot of those cats. Yeah.
yeah, these oh wait, well, they're starting to disperse. That's a good thing. Okay. As long as they just don't chew on my Ethernet, then we're good.
Exactly. Yes.
That's what the distraction's for. But yeah, I think especially with hospitals, because by nature hospitals are fairly chaotic. Even if you're there for like a routine surgery, there's a lot of chaos in a hospital. So I think that just drums up its own energy too. And this is something I've noticed, especially with like haunted hospitals that I visited, like the Trivet Clinic in North Carolina. That's more of a clinic, but there were overnight stays that happened there. Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, Trans-Allegheny to a certain extent. I mean, because there was other people at Trans-Allegheny outside of mental health issues. I think there's just something to that of like, you have all this chaotic energy and it doesn't have a place to go.
Yeah.
And it just kind of remains there. I mean, and with an active hospital, it's very much still like, I feel like it's like a leaf in the wind where every time it's like, it starts to calm down a little, it just blows, like the wind blows again and stirs it up. I feel like that's kind of how it is with active hospitals. But then, eventually the leaf falls, but then it starts twitching in the wind or in a breeze and trying to find meaning. So that was a really like metaphorical comparison. But
well, you did say you're a theater person.
I am. That's the master's degree coming through.
Yeah.
So I'm getting my money's worth.
CMC said, question. The hospital I was born in was sold and turned into condos. Have you heard of hauntings of such facilities?
It's like right out of the Poltergeist almost, right?
Out of curiosity, is this in South Carolina? Because I did hear of a hospital that was torn down in South Carolina and got turned into condos, or at least got turned into townhomes. Yeah, I have heard of it actually. Oh, this is in the Northeast. Well, a similar situation happened in South Carolina, and there has been activity reported. So, I think honestly, I feel like what people should do in situations like this, like at least do some sort of like memorial or blessing ceremony just to kind of calm, or at least acknowledge and calm the energy down. At least not necessarily like a exorcism or a deliverance or a removal, but it's like, hey, this happened, we want to take a moment to remember before we break ground, and then let's move forward. I think that could make a huge difference. But yeah, it's I don't know why people think that's a good idea, not just for the haunting aspect, but just for like the memory, the memory of the situation. So
yeah,
little memorial plaque or something.
Yeah,
hey, this used to be such and such hospital.
Yeah.
You still want to buy this condo? Oh, no.
I was going to say, people probably wouldn't want to buy if they knew. I mean,
yeah,
maybe.
I guess that's the problem. Yeah.
So, okay. I have a whole bunch of questions, but they're kind of all over the place. I was looking to see if there was one kind of tied into what we're talking about. I guess I can ask this because this might be the answer. So you've covered a lot of different topics associated with ghosts and spooky stuff. Are hospitals your favorite topic, or what is your favorite topic?
Ooh, my favorite topic. Right now, I'm really interested in the relationship between basically us as a collective society and our beliefs in spirits, and its relationship with hauntings. That I'm really fascinated with it right now. I read a book called Ghostland by Colin Dickey. Really good book. Really, really good book. And he kind of drops some hard truths on us, like of how ghost stories have evolved over, at least in American history, and how like the context of some of these ghost stories have changed based on like societal perceptions. Like ghost stories that came out pre Jim Crow versus versus how they molded and changed after Jim Crow, which is like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. So that's really what, like, for example, why do we have so many women in white stories? What is it about the relationship with women in society and their place in society at the time? And are these women in white stories like a form of us trying to get redemption for, how women were treated in like early, just up until mid 20th century, even 24th century now. So, and it's really interesting, especially when, like paranormal investigators go to asylums, where Trans Allegheny, that's off the top of my head. I actually just visited there a few weeks ago. And we're trying to make sense with like mental health right now as a society, and, find out where we fit within like our own neurodivergencies or mental health issues. And I mean, Trans Allegheny is trying to destigmatize mental health issues, but then they sell t-shirts that say like, I got thrown in the loony bin at Tala. It's like, come on, y'all. But I think, when we go into these spaces, knowing like this immense trauma happened, is this a way for us as investigators to process our own trauma, also dealing with, the fact that in American history, people with mental health issues weren't exactly treated well. Is this a way of us like processing our own mental health when we do these investigations? And this is something I've been really diving into for the last couple years. I do a presentation now about the relationship between trauma, paranormal experiences, and how many of us have probably used ghost hunting as a form of therapy.
Yeah, I mean, there's been such an increase in the amount of people who are interested in the paranormal. Like, and you mentioned earlier, like in 2006, like, there wasn't a community for paranormal, and now it's a huge thing. I don't know if it's I've been curious lately actually about whether that's starting to decline or whether it's still increasing, but it's a huge thing. Um, and so there's much more ways for people to be able to access that information, I guess, than there used to be. But you mentioned something earlier that was very interesting to me too, which is going back to the idea of ghost stories changing pre-Jim Crow, post-Jim Crow. And the idea of like the lady in white, which it brought to mind. I just heard a story the other day about Lake Lanier. I don't know if you're familiar with the stories there. But Lake Lanier in Georgia is a big haunted spot that people are going to now for like ghost tourism. And there's also a sighting of a lady in blue. So, and that seems to be, I don't want to use trope because I'm not trying to mean the stories at all, but it is something that you hear a lot of, the lady in this color dress that everyone sees.
Yeah.
But I wanted to find out more in depth, like what specifically are the changes that you've seen from what happens maybe like, pre-Jim Crow as opposed to more modern stories?
Yeah. So, gosh, I'm trying to see if I have the book close by. There was a story that Colin Dickey references, and I definitely, if you grab the book off of Amazon, highly recommend. But there is a story that he talks about where the early version of the ghost story. So let's say, I want to say it was like mid to late Revolutionary War era, where the spirit, the female spirit that was at the center of it was actually indigenous. And then after the Civil War, the ghost switched to an African American woman. And then so I want to say pre-Jim Crow, it remained as a Black woman, but then after Jim Crow, the ghost became white. But it was the same story. They just changed it, but the race of the ghost changed. Another one is and that's where I find really interesting. It's like that switch happened about Civil War after the Emancipation Proclamation. So it's like one of those like, well, why that change? But there tends to be I've noticed, and Colin Dickey notices this too and makes a note of it, that sometimes ghost stories can be a bit exploitive, where it's like it falls into, I'm not a huge fan of this word, but falls into like stereotypical tropes. But like the one I'm thinking of off the top of my head is Chloe at the Myrtle's plantation. There's no documentation that Chloe actually existed. And the story with Chloe is she was a slave. She was a mistress to her master. And we know what that means. And she was caught eavesdropping while, her master was talking business, and he cast her out. And the story is that she wanted to win favor back and be useful again. So she put just a little bit of poison in a cake that her master's wife and his children ate. But there was a little too much poison. So the wife and the children died. And then the other slaves pointed Chloe out, said it was her that did it, and she ended up getting lynched and killed and body thrown in the river. That's the story. However, not only is there no record of Chloe, but if you look up the owner who owned Myrtle's plantation back then, the wife and the children did not die from eating poison cake.
Yeah.
And two of them died. I want to say two of them died from scarlet fever, and then the other kid lived to adulthood. So there really is no evidence to validate that there was any legitimacy to the story. But also it kind of really falls into some really harmful tropes. Like this evil slave that was poisoning the family, and scheming to get back in, and just it's also dehumanizing as well. And I've really been trying to explore my own how my thoughts about ghost stories like these too, where I'm is it dehumanizing the person, the subject at hand, and is it validating some harmful outlooks?
That's really interesting, because that's kind of my field. And so I find the way that those two things kind of rub against each other very interesting, because that's one thing that we've pushed for more in the historical field when it comes to enslaved history and African American history is talking about the agency of the people who were enslaved. So the fact that these just weren't people who were enslaved, but they're people who deserve to have their stories told, and what they did with their lives should be told. But one of those things in the history field that we have tried to discuss more and to show more is the fact that there was resistance, that they did oftentimes try to poison and show forms of resistance to their status as enslaved. So on one hand, I can see where it's okay, well, we're just blaming someone who's enslaved here. But on the other hand, I don't know if it would be that far from the historical what we know historically about what was happening on plantations. So that's interesting. It's definitely interesting to look at.
It really is. I wrote a book about haunted places in Northern Virginia that's coming out in September, and one of the locations is the Brentsville Jail and Courthouse, over, I think it's Prince William County or Fairfax County, but there's a lot of activity surrounding the courthouse and the jail. And the jail is an interesting situation, because mainly the people who were mainly jailed there were Black, enslaved people, women, and people from the LGBTQ community. And I'm like, oh, interesting. But the enslaved women that were in prison there, were actually lynched for, murdering their masters. So, but it's then a ghost story pops up from that, and it's I'm okay, what social commentary is taking place from the fruition of this story?
Especially if you notice what the time period that the story is coming out of.
Yep.
If that story is coming about now, as opposed to, well, now we're going to use that word 3 times, even though neither of us want to use it, but trope that's coming out of pre-civil rights America, Well,
Yep.
that's interesting. And you know, we kind of have an experience with that to a certain degree as well. We went to Lake Shawnee uh,
Oh, yeah.
in West Virginia.
Yeah.
We went there and did an investigation there, and Jenny didn't know anything about uh, the park before we went, so she kind of did like a
Gotcha.
blind walkthrough, and lots of stories about that place, and some of them we definitely found a little bit of evidence for. But one experience that she had was coming across a tree that someone was lynched on. So
Oh,
you know,
Yeah.
wow.
a man was hung there, and there's no, of course, you know, I
No
go through
record
and I
of it.
start,
Yeah.
I start researching, you know, like you know, lynchings in the area, but we know that, you know, probably more than 50% of them were never reported or never known about. So
Mm,
there's no
yeah.
way, because, you know, you're trying to get the evidence for what she's getting as a medium, but it
Yep.
wasn't something that I could like, okay, well, here's this guy who was lynched at this spot. We know they were done in the area. I found the records of them from that area, but nothing to say, hey, this was there. So, you know, all we could do was say, hey, if you have other groups come in and do investigations and you get any information that comes through about that, you know, kind of let us know for some validation there.
Hmm.
But and then what do you do
Yeah.
with that story? You know, because it becomes a whole lot more difficult to kind of talk about, and you don't want to seem like you're like trying to use that situation for like clout in your
And
investigation.
I don't
But
think that there was anybody, you know, ghost wise related there. I was just picking up on
yeah,
what had happened there, which is something that Alex is talking about with the hospital situation. It's like
yeah,
some of that stuff isn't people that are stuck in the hospital. It's just the
the
stuff that
energy.
happened there is
Yeah,
still, you know, it's that residual energy that gets left
Yeah.
behind.
It's like it's permeating in the air, still.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
nice.
interesting. Well, we were talking about theaters earlier, and we were talking about haunted theaters. And when we met you at the Hanover Tavern, they have a theater there.
They do.
So I wanted to ask, did you have any? We got to do a little bit of investigation that night. We were in there for a little bit, but it was kind of hectic, and we'd love to go back and do some more there. But have you had any personal experiences with, I guess, all of Hanover Tavern, but specifically in the theater?
Oh yeah, I've had a couple experiences in the theater. I haven't investigated Hanover Tavern quite yet. I mean, I did the group investigation last year. I
Mm,
didn't do it this year because I decided to drive home after because I'm only like hour and a half away. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
Plus, I turn into a pumpkin after 9 o'clock. So
Yeah.
So you're
which
not one of those night owls from the news story we had earlier.
sometimes, well, I am, but if I'm like at home by myself and I'm
Yeah.
reading or I'm writing,
Uh,
um, I don't know. Maybe it's my age. I mean, I'm saying this like I'm like 55 years old watching Matlock and Murder She Wrote after six
Murder She
o'clock.
Wrote.
Yeah.
That was my grandma's show.
I love that show. Yeah, I don't know if it's just my age or just, I don't know. I don't do well in big group investigations anymore because if I'm going to
Mhm,
be there and spend my time, then I really want to try to like have an investigation and something that's a bit more thoughtful and not like herding cats. So I mean,
mhm.
Yeah.
the big kudos to Steve and Transcend Paranormal for doing all
They
that
were
because
awesome.
I mean, they're
Yeah,
amazing. So I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah.
y'all are great. Y'all are awesome. Kudos because I don't have the
Mhm,
patience. So I haven't had the pleasure of investigating there yet. I've actually debated though going to maybe some of the tours or next time they host an investigation there and it's smaller.
mhm.
But yeah, haunted theaters. I've actually had quite a few experiences in theaters. And let's see. So I talked about the ballerina one. That one is actually one of my favorites. I had the theater that I worked at when I was in college. It was actually the theater. Well, there's 3 theaters on campus. And I was working as a house manager at the time. And the house manager is basically the person who unlocks the door, makes sure that the lobby's set up, make sure everyone gets out, and you turn the lights out and lock the doors. Like that's what house managing does. Um, one of the experiences I had was at my college. And I actually had my own office in the theater lobby. It was like if this is the lobby, there was some stairs that went off that goes to the theater, but then there's also like an extra door. If you go through that door, that was my office. So during the show, usually I see the show like 5 or 6 times before it opens. And so I'm just sitting in the office and listening for cues, to do things. But I was closing up for the night and I was like, okay, I got to go get my purse from the office. And the light was on in my office. I left it on once the show's over. I'm like, I don't care if people see the light, I'm like, whatever. So I was walking up the stairs to get my purse and the door opens and I see the light from the office on the wall in front of me. And I see a shadow, like an outline of a person walking into the office. And I'm thinking, maybe it was the stage manager but I thought the stage manager was gone by then, but we all share the same office space. So I was like, okay, it must be, such and such. I go into my office to grab my purse and say goodnight. There's nobody in that office.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay. So I turn off the light. And of course, when I turn off the light, it's pitch black in the theater in the lobby. So I'm like shuffling my feet and trying to get out of there quickly. Because at this point it's like 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, nah, not right now, ghosties. I'm going to bed. And plus my campus wasn't exactly the safest place at night. So I was like, nope. I'm going to power walk to my car for multiple reasons. But yes, I got my steps in. But yeah, so that one was, looking back, I was like, oh, that's really cool. And it was happening when I least expected it. And it was just a neat evening. Looking back at the moment, I was like,
Yeah.
Literally, I saw the light. I go into the office and I'm like, oh, hey, but
Oh,
nope.
yeah.
I'm like, nope. Like, we're not doing this tonight.
The other way.
Out of here.
Yep. I was tired and I was like, nope. The other one was in the smaller black box theater on campus. So this was more my college campus, what is haunted, very haunted. San Diego State, Texas. And I was going into the theater to work on, because I had a class in there, but I was also working on blocking. Yep, that was exactly my thought. Not tonight. Not tonight. Like this, no. So I was walking into the theater during the day. It was like 1 o'clock. And I go into the theater and out of the corner of my eye, I see someone in the sound booth. And I'm like, okay, there was a show getting ready to open in like 3 weeks. I'm like, it's probably the lighting designer or the sound designer, somebody in there just doing putting in cues or something. And I go in, I see the person sitting. I see the person sitting out of the corner of my eye, like what they were wearing. It was like shorts and a like a sweater with a blue stripe across. Like I knew exactly what I saw, but I didn't know exactly who it was. I'm like, wait, who is that? And then so I look up. And there's nobody in the booth. And I'm like,
wow.
I'm like, great. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But that time I was like, okay, we're talking. And I was like, hey, who's here? What's up? Hey, what are you working on sound cues? What you doing there? What you working on over there?
Yeah.
You putting in some lighting cues, some sound cues, what you doing? But yeah, no, that was another one that I was like, okay, that was interesting. And then let's see, the last really notable one. It was at the 10th Avenue Theater, which the book, The Haunting of the 10th Avenue Theater, it's actually what inspired me to really investigate the 10th Avenue Theater. This is a theater in downtown San Diego off 10th Avenue, not too far from the gas lamp for anyone familiar with San Diego. Building used to be a church, a Southern Baptist church in California.
That's weird.
I grew up in a Southern Baptist church in San Diego too. The Southern Baptist Convention did have a presence in California. A lot of it's because of military. Military people are coming to San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a big reason.
Yep.
So the particular building where the theater was, it used to be a chapel. It used to be a 24-hour chapel, so that when sailors came to port, they had a place to pray. Makes sense. There's a couple of stories surrounding. There's like a child. There's always a child that haunts a theater, or a woman in white, or an actress, or a ballerina. But there was also a British lieutenant that haunts the theater, and apparently kind of like with my car accident story, apparently he hitched a ride with a sailor during World War II.
Mm.
And apparently when the sailor came into port during World War II, he was a surgeon. And he had ended up trying to save this British lieutenant. Like the story is like this medic, this military medic, the sailor, he could actually feel the lieutenant's heart stop beating in his hand. Apparently the lieutenant hitched a ride with him to San Diego. I mean, if I was a ghost, I don't blame them. You know, maybe go to Hawaii, you know, something, you know. And apparently while the sailor was praying, he like started to seize, like he had a seizure, but then he just came out of it like he was okay. And then after that, people started to see a British lieutenant in the uniform around at the time, the church, the chapel. And one of the places that he would hang out in was like the upper areas and the rafters and the balcony areas. So I was doing a show at the theater. I was doing a stage reading of one of my plays. One of the big things that the theater owner told me was, you know, because he asked me like, hey, how do you want the lights to go down after you introduce the play? And I'm like, if it could be immediate, that'd be great. And he's like, okay, just make sure your person is in the booth, which is locked with a key. I'm like, cool, that's fine. Turned out the person who was supposed to do the lighting booth did not show up. So I'm like, okay, how can I do this? So basically it was one of those things where the booth was on the second floor and the theater, like where I would be introducing, was on the first floor. So basically it turned into, and I had the key, like anytime, like if you're not in the booth, the door is locked. It's locked. The booth is locked. You cannot get in, no matter what. So basically after I introduced the play, I basically told the audience, I'm like, I told my actors too before, I said, don't start until the lights go down. Do not start until the lights go down. Like, please do not start. And I just told the audience, like, the lights will be down in just a moment. And I just ran, like literally kicked off my heels and ran up the stairs, went to unlock the door to the booth. And I opened the door and I hear my actors are already talking. They've already started the play. And I was like, son of a I'm like, I specifically told them not to start until the lights went down. I opened the door and I look and the lights were already turned down.
Oh, thank you, Lieutenant.
No, exactly. I'm like, I wish the lieutenant gave me a heads up before I almost, had an asthma attack going up the stairs. Like I'm literally like wheezing, like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
If you could do it consistently, just every time, that way you don't have to worry about it.
I don't think I've ever ran that fast since, because I was like, oh my God, I'm like, really, yeah, but it was wild. And I'm like, no, and I looked at the knob, like, and it was turned down, like somebody physically moved the fader down, and I'm like,
wow,
cool. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
He was paying attention. He didn't need a key to get in that door.
He didn't, and he listened to the cue, like, don't start the play till the lights go down. So, I was like, thanks, sir. So, and actually after that, I went to the owner and I said, hey, you got ghosts here, don't you? And he's like, yep. I'm like, can I check them out? And he's like, and he actually gave me the key to the building, and he's like, yep, have fun. So,
wow.
He's like, just let me know when you're coming in so I know people are out. I'm like,
awesome.
So basically for like 2 years, me and my team, we had unlimited access to this theater. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Good times.
That's a fun story.
Yeah. Gotta love haunted. A lot of my haunted theater stories are just experiences in haunted theaters. They're usually like fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the ghosts there usually aren't as malevolent as, or you don't get as many malevolent stories out of theaters maybe as you would other places. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's because they're all theater geeks.
Yeah.
They're all drama geeks. That's why. They're actors.
Yeah.
So
I think we could go we were kind of getting into it a little tiny bit earlier when we were talking about when you were talking about the Jim Crow stuff, but I saw, I believe, on your YouTube channel, which, by the way, Alex's website is pinned up at the top on Twitch, and it's also, I can put it again on the YouTube video here.
And if you're listening through the podcast in another time, in another place, I'll have all of those links listed in the description below. If Keisha doesn't get to it first, because a lot of times she'll have it posted in there before I even get it up. So it'll definitely be there for you.
What I saw was a video that was kind of, I think, referring to like the ethics of ghost hunting as referring to the ghost's perspective. So I was wondering if we could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Oh man. A lot of my later content, especially when it comes to the ethics of ghost hunting and investigating, has really come from this new, maybe not so new anymore, but wave of content creators who overreact to things. It's like, oh my God, just saying things that, I mean, as an example, I was watching a very popular content creator at the orphanage at the Jenny Wade house last year, maybe 2 years ago. And the story behind the orphanage, like, and the reason why again, maybe a way to call back to processing trauma, but orphans, kids were abused there by their caretaker, Rosa Carmichael. She was eventually run out of town. She was fined like $5, which big money back in 19th century. And so, I mean, I've had experiences at the orphanage where I have encountered the kids, and like I 100%, I mean, I've literally felt something in my lap and felt something play with my hair at the orphanage, and it was very childlike, very innocent. But Rosa is also still there as well. She is a nasty entity. It's either Rosa or like the accumulation of all that trauma and pain just kind of manifested into some sort of creature. It's very unsettling. I've encountered this thing a couple times, and it's not my first choice, but I'll go. Why are all my cats meowing? Anyway, but this content creator was at the orphanage, not even in the basement, but in like the main floor, and was trying to get the kids to come and talk to them, but then the kids wouldn't go up to them, and then started like calling out to Rosa, like, oh my gosh, like, Rosa, like rolling their R's and like, Rosa, where are you, Rosa? Very like, and then like, okay, kids, come talk to me. Why aren't the kids coming to talk to me? And I'm like, you're literally calling out their abuser and telling their abuser to come forward. And also, it's like you're kind of making light of the trauma that they went through and this horrific experience that they had in their life when they were alive. And it just left a really bad taste in my mouth. But I noticed, but I know like that's not the outlier. Like that sort of behavior is no longer an outlier. It's very much a common thing. And yeah, I mean, it's a less interesting, I guess, entertainment wise, it's a less interesting investigation, treating the spirits with respect, and not even just the spirits, whether or not you believe in them or not, but just the space with respect. It's like, have some respect for like the orphanage, like some terrible things happened in this orphanage, not just during the Battle of Gettysburg, but also, with these kids. And I'm like, have some respect for like the events that happened here. Just kind of take a moment and reflect on like the sacrifice and the pain, that was experienced here, and not be calling out to the worst possible human being. Like you're wearing a fruit stack on your head, So yeah.
Well, I think that's interesting because it kind of delves into what we were talking about a little bit before with the idea of the field of the paranormal, the interest in the paranormal increasing. And I especially think like once like paranormal television started booming, and a lot of people want to participate in the investigations. And now you have, we were talking about a Hanover, lots of people coming in to learn how to do investigations or get their feet wet with it, but they really don't really don't understand that. They're just going there to see if they find anything spooky or not.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
think that leads to a couple issues. One with issues like that, not if because I think a lot of people in the paranormal field have had an experience at some point that made them a believer to a certain extent. And
Mhm.
so they treat the paranormal as if it's real, or at least, give it some kind of respect. Whereas if you have someone who has not had a paranormal experience, but they want to go out on a Friday night and do a cool investigation and see if they see anything spooky, they might not treat that entity with any kind of respect because they don't necessarily believe that it's real.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I've noticed some of the guilty parties have been skeptics. And don't get me wrong, I
Yeah.
love myself a good skeptic. Like
For sure.
I'm a skeptical believer myself. We need
Yes.
skeptics in this field.
I'm gonna steal that term because I think skeptical believer is a great term for me as well.
I mean, and really how
Mhm.
I define myself as that is I really want to believe, but I'm not going to believe that the dust flying around your IR, your ring light, your ring camera is a ghost. It's like I need something a little more substantial to convince me. That's a whole other subject for another
Well,
time. But
there has to be some kind of level of credibility, or else the stuff that is real loses its credibility.
Thank you. That's it's like we're spending so much time watching the dust in a camera when like there's probably a ghost there going like, "Hey, what's up? I'm moving things for you and I'm doing like a dance in the corner." And it's like, but you're
Yeah.
all too busy watching the dust,
If I see a bug fly by on a Ring doorbell again, I'm gonna lose my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really just so wild. But I have noticed, and I like I said, for the most part I love skeptics, but I've noticed that, and I mean, I did ghost tours once upon a time as a leader, and I just kind of noticed sometimes that some of the skeptics, because they don't believe in it or they really want that proof, they kind of turn into jerks about it. Like,
Yeah.
oh well, this ain't real. Blah, blah, blah. It's very like, oh
Mhm.
hey ghost, can you come talk to me? It's like,
Mhm.
stop. Like they're
Yeah.
not going to talk to you now because you're being like this, but
Mhm.
it's just, and plus it taints the experience for other people who maybe are taking this more serious. And they, and I've always like tried to tell people, regardless of how you're coming in to this field, like, especially like a lot of people come into this from grief too. Like they're trying to make
Yeah.
sense of after losing a loved one, or they had their own experience and they're really just trying to make sense of things. And I've noticed that people who do come from that background, like you mentioned, they come in with more reverence and they come in with a bit more, I guess, respect,
Mhm.
like their motivation. But yeah, if they are seeing it as just like a point of entertainment, it can become a bit problematic. And I always try
Mhm.
to do this disclaimer of like, hey, even if you don't believe in it, hey, enjoy the experience, stay respectful, and we'll see what happens.
I have a feeling that a lot of those people that are being jerkwads during investigations wouldn't be compassionate to a living person either. So
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I think there's a
that
line,
too.
not necessarily like I think there's some people who just, not to drag this point out, but I just feel like even if they could be decent people, but if they don't believe that it's really a possibility, that they don't really like empathy wise, they don't really see
yeah,
what's wrong
no,
with
I
it
can
because
see
it
that
doesn't
too.
exist,
Yeah, I can see that too.
Um,
I'm just saying some of those people are just
for
jerks in
sure.
general.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
CMC is trying to get you to come see all kinds of places. Okay.
I'm
So
seeing this. I'm like, oh my gosh,
yes,
I'm gonna be in
Seattle,
Seattle. I'm gonna be in
Everett
Seattle the
Theater.
second week of August. So I may try.
And then what did he just say? Be sure to visit the nearby Cabbage Patch restaurant. There's a little girl
Ooh.
occupies the stairwell to the second floor. So he's giving you all kinds of places to go check out.
There we
He
go.
is. I love it. Love it.
Funny. Okay, before we run out of time, because it's 9:30 already. I don't know
Yeah, I
how that
know.
happened. I wanted to talk about your Women of the Paranormal.
Yes.
First of all, are you going to come out with a volume 2?
Yes. I was trying to get volume 2 out before Haunted America,
Mhm.
like back in June, but then I burned myself out and it was not pretty.
Yeah.
So now tentatively I'm planning on releasing volume 2 in March. So for Women's History Month.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I was like, oh, the timing just works out better. And plus I already have a book coming out in the fall. So I'm like, yeah, I don't want them to cross over too much.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
So yeah, volume 2, there's probably gonna be about I'm thinking like either 35 or 40 women. I'm gonna choose a clean number this time. Volume 1 has 38, and it's because I couldn't make decisions on who to cut. I was like, they're all fabulous. Why would I cut him? Yeah, so volume 2 is in the works. I'm a little over halfway done actually with volume
Nice.
2. There's some really fun ones in there this time. Fun ones, but also some of them who may or may not have had abilities that managed to fool some very smart men. Enough of them where I'm actually debating creating like a one-off novella of like clever women who tricked smart men. Actually a lot of it's actually
That
been a
sounds
lot of
fun.
yeah, just like a little fun, maybe like 15,000, 20,000 word novella of like these are some of the funner women I found. Yeah, a lot of some more witches this time around. Several parapsychologists, and then of course, possibly fraudulent mediums, but
Mhm.
they had some credibility. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just been really interesting writing volume 2, which kind of had already started last year because I mean, I went from 12 women who I spent like 5 years researching, and then I went to the Library of Congress because I moved to DC, and I was like, oh hey, it's right
Mhm.
here, one of
Yeah.
the best research sources in the world, and reached out to the librarians. I was like, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and then now I have like 300 women, so I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
okay. So there's probably going to be at least 4 or 5 volumes because I still have to vet all of them, obviously. But
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, there's more
I'm
than
gonna
12.
I'm gonna cut that piece out and show because I'm a teacher, so I have students and I teach college level,
Oh, yeah.
and trying the first time I have them write research papers, and the first time they're doing research, they're like, I couldn't find anything online about this thing, and they're just like doing Google searches, and I'm like, you have to go to a physical library
Talk
and
to a
talk to the
librarian.
librarians, and they
They
will
want to help.
hook you up. And they're
Yeah.
like, nobody goes to the real library anymore. And I'm like, look, you're doing college level research. You have to. So I'm going to cut that little part out. And just to be like, look, you'll have everything you need just talk to some librarians and they will wheel carts out for you, like
Yeah.
of just
Literally.
information.
That's what happened. Like I reached out to the like because they have a whole ask a librarian thing with the Library of Congress, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is my research subject, and the librarian I talked to at the LOC was like, oh, that's interesting. And then
Yeah.
literally I get there for my because you have to get a research card, you have to get a researcher card. Anybody can get one, like anybody, like even if you're only visiting for like the weekend from Canada,
Mhm.
you can get one. The line is stupid long, but you can get one. So
Yeah.
I had to go back another time. So it was my second visit, and I had talked to, the librarian I talked to was there, and literally like she had trays and trays and trays of books. And I'm like, wait, what? She's like, yeah, you said spooky women, like paranormal women in parapsychology, witches, spiritualists. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, yep. So this cart is spiritualist. This cart is parapsychologist. This cart over there is, like some women who were like mystics. And I'm like, oh, so we're going even more granular than spiritualists.
Yeah.
Okay. And she was like, yeah, let me know if you need anything. I'm like,
You could be there for weeks.
yeah, I was basically there for like the entire I got there at like 8 a.m. and I was there until like 5 or 6 when they closed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm like, can you save these cards for me? And she's like, oh yeah, no one else is and she's like, as long as no one else requests it, I can. So she basically put my cards like in a whole other area of the Library of Congress, and I have no idea like where, but she kept them for me, and I'm like, I was like, oh my God. But yeah, I literally went because I thought it was going to be like maybe 5 or 6 books or something. But it was like, no, carts and shelves, like bins. Like she's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, I'm like, okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's so cool.
So I guess what we're saying here is shout out to all the librarians out there. If you're a librarian listening to the show, thank you, because you helped me through my master's degree.
So, who are some of your favorite women in the paranormal?
Ooh, so I definitely have to say Catherine Crowe. Possibly the first ghost hunter. I always say possibly because I can't say for sure, but so far I have not found anyone earlier than her who used a similar approach that we use today. Yeah. I don't count exorcists. I don't count experimental, like, I'm going to buy a haunted house and see if a ghost appears. Yes, Catherine Crowe. Yeah. I got to visit her grave. I was in London for work, and I was there over the weekend. And she's buried in Kent, in Folkestone. And I'm like, could I get there? And I looked it up.
There's a picture of it.
Yeah. And I looked it up, and it was like an hour-long train ride. And I'm like, oh. Well, one, I realized how small the UK was. I'm like, oh, I can get there in like an hour and a half. Okay, cool. And that's on the train. Although it was a high-speed rail, to be fair. And then I looked at where the train station was in relationship to the cemetery where she was buried. And the cemetery was literally just down the hill. And I'm like, oh, nice. I have to go. Yeah. So I paid my respects to Catherine back in April. Super emotional, cool experience. And, I just kind of gave her like an update on what I was like, hey, what you did in that weird haunted house in Scotland when you were alive. Yeah. I mean, we're still doing that. We're still doing that. There's the other cat. Or that's the same one y'all saw.
I have mine now too. So
we have, nice. Yeah. It's just the cats. It's the cat podcast tonight.
Yeah. This is Gouda. And he's also a polydactyl cat, so he has thumbs.
Oh, so, cool. Yeah. He can get into some real trouble with those.
Oh, yes, he can. He can open doors. He can open doors. That's great. Let's see. Another one, Rose Mackenberg. She was actually Harry Houdini's assistant.
Oh.
She was actually one of the more she was his right hand person, and actually a big reason why his legacy has survived as well as it has today, because she was there to make sure it survived. I can't forget my favorite lesbian power couple, Radcliffe Hall and Una Trowbridge. And they were not in the closet. If you Google their picture, they were not in the closet. And the fact that they were able to be members, they were council members for the Society for Psychical Research in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So, like I said, look up their picture. They are not in the closet.
Yeah.
So the fact that they were out and doing what they were doing was amazing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, super cool. Couple of my favorites. They were a delightful discovery. And really it was because I found Una Trowbridge's name, at the library. And I knew of Radcliffe Hall, but I didn't realize that Radcliffe Hall was a woman. And I was like, oh, Una Trowbridge, oh my God. Like, I was like, whoa. Wow. So I'm like, super cool.
Way ahead of their time.
Super way ahead of their time. Yep.
That's amazing.
Yep. Let's see, another one. We've got to give a shout out to Rosemary Ellen Guiley. She was taken from us way too soon. Really, really trying to break the glass ceiling with female presence in paranormal entertainment. She was amazing. Gosh, there's just so many. I'm like, there's so many.
And now you've found so many more.
I know. I know. I'm like, and people are like, who are your favorites? I'm like, oh my God. And I was like, Sophie's Choice. Yeah. Dr. Florence Barrett, of course. Big. medical doctor. She has wings of hospitals in Britain named after her for like
Wow.
gynecology, OBGYN. She was married to one of the founders of SPR. Didn't really believe in any of it until after he died, and he made himself known to a psychic medium who then reached out to Dr. Barrett and said, "Hey, your husband got in touch with me and this is what he told me." And she was able to describe exactly like where he was in the house when he died, which
Oh,
Dr.
wow.
Barrett did not disclose that publicly. And she actually ended up scheduling seances or sittings with this medium, and it lasted for like 5 or 6 years. And she wrote a book. I think it's
Wow.
called Survival of Consciousness or Life After Life of Consciousness. It's consciousness survival of some kind of thing. If you look up Dr. Florence Barrett, you'll see God, I can't remember the name of the book off the top of my head. It's terrible. But medical doctor, like she worked with
Is it
Marie
a
Curie.
personality survives
That's
death?
what it is. Personality
Mm.
survives death. That's what it is. But yeah, I mean, she worked with Marie Curie. Like,
Yeah.
you know, smart, brilliant woman. Like,
Mhm.
advocated for birth control, like way ahead of her time. She also
I think she was one of the ones that you talked about in the talk that we saw you give at the
Yes.
Hanover Tavern. Yeah.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, really neat one. Pamela Coleman Smith, she was the artist behind the tarot cards.
Oh, everybody here knows her.
Oh, good. Yes.
Because it's the tarot. Yeah, it's like the tarot people on Twitch.
Good. Yeah, definitely did not get enough credit in her
No.
life for what she did, and the
No.
fact that she was basically begging for money.
Yeah.
After she did the cards. Yeah, there's so many good ones. So many good ones. And there's some who are controversial as well. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody comes with a little bit of controversy. I mean, you know,
In the
so
paranormal field, I guess that's to be expected.
yeah, everyone
Yeah.
comes with its own brand of spice. It's just what kind of
Yeah.
brand of spice are you willing to is just like, yeah, I guess I can talk about you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think the first woman that I came across in the paranormal field that like I was reading stories about when I was young, like a teenager, was probably Lorraine Warren.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of stuff going on with that now, but I still kind of hold a lot of respect just because it's still in a time where it's a lot of still male dominated stuff, or at least in the media.
Mhm.
She was someone who was out and about and being seen for what was going on with the paranormal field.
Yeah, yep, I do agree with that. And she is in volume 1. And I actually battled a bit about whether or not to put her in because 1, she was already very famous, but 2, you know, you briefly mentioned there are some issues with
She's got her own spice.
She's got her own spice.
Yeah.
But I don't want to say but because that negates the harm that may or may not have been caused by her. And yet she was somebody who was groundbreaking. I mean, her and Ed were, but I did notice when I was doing, because I did research on Lorraine. I did a lot of I actually went and did a lot of genealogy research on Lorraine, which led me into newspapers. Yeah, I actually learned a lot about the Warrens.
Wow, that's very interesting. Yeah.
I learned a lot about the Warrens that I didn't really know before. Like when you look at census, like I was looking at census records. I mean, I was going very granular because I'm like, is there a story that I could tell here? Like besides her legacy, like what? And I ended up working with John Zaffis. I worked with her grandson, tried to work with her son-in-law and Judy, but it didn't quite work out. And I noticed in the newspapers, especially the ones that were more critical, were constantly attacking Lorraine for being a woman in the field when she needed to be home and take care of her kid or care of kids and be a mother. But by the time they had really made mainstream waves, Lorraine, like Judy was already grown. Like Judy was already grown. And I think Ed and Lorraine may have actually been grandparents at this point because I think Chris was already born by then. But the fact that Lorraine was getting criticized for being a neglectful mother and parent, but yet Ed wasn't.
Yeah.
Who's also a father. Like, why wasn't he being told, like, you need to be home with your daughter and your wife? What are you doing? it was Lorraine getting that criticism. So I thought that, so that was actually ended up being my angle of, you know, Lorraine had to deal with a lot early in her career, especially when the criticism towards her and Ed was not equal, and in fact very sexist.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and there's someone, you know, and this is where it becomes difficult, even because when you talk about the issues there, but it's like one of the first paranormal books I ever wrote was I can't remember the name of the book, but it was what became the movie A Haunting in Connecticut, about a family that lived in what used to be a funeral home and all that. And I read that. I was probably 14, 15 years old. And I was like, oh, this is super awesome. It's just you know, it's a great story. And you know, later on down the road, I listened to Coast to Coast AM, and they have you know, the Warrens' stepson on, and he's on with Art Bell a lot and Coast to Coast, and that got me into all the things that I talk about on this show now. So it's like, you know, regardless of what happens with that, it's like in some ways the exposure that some of those people are able to give in some ways is still important, no matter where that comes from, because it still gets people interested in the field.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's kind of a give and take there, I guess. But
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I think that a lot of that goes all the way back, you know, to the 1800s, and when they're starting to do spiritualism and stuff.
Yeah.
Same things going on, you know. Certain people are doing more than what they say they're doing, and some people are for real, and that's just the way it's always been, I think.
And some people, I think some people are for real, but you need more sometimes, and you know, and so sometimes people stretch your stories and push the boundaries a little bit, which shouldn't negate everything they did. I don't know. That's a whole nother, that's a topic for a whole nother podcast. But anyway.
Yeah.
So what do you, I just want to reset real quick as we kind of move towards the end here. If you've been listening, you didn't catch the beginning of the show. We have Alex Matsuo on tonight. We've been talking about all kinds of stuff, haunted hospitals, all women in the paranormal, haunted theaters. All the links for Alex will be listed down below in the description, so you can go check out her webpage, the spooky stuff. The links for the books for Amazon are on that webpage, so you go check that out. And I know that you have had a lot going on, and you probably have a lot coming up. So what do you have? You talked about a couple of books that you're working on. What else do we have coming up for you, Alex?
Yeah, so the big thing coming up next is I am actually hosting my first paranormal conference, like that me and my team are putting on. It's called the Paranormal Research Symposium. It's going to be taking place on Saturday, August 17th in Gettysburg.
Nice.
There's going to be, we have about 25 speakers presenting, doing workshops and doing panels across 3 different spaces. One of them is the orphanage at Gettysburg. The other is the Hotel Gettysburg, and then Ghost City Tours. But yeah, it's going to be a great time. Tickets are on sale now. So come join us and play with us in Gettysburg as we, you know, it's a very academic centric conference. So we actually don't have vendor tables for this because we want people to be going to these lectures and presentations, and not sitting behind a table or shopping. You know, I mean, it's Gettysburg. There's plenty of shopping. There's plenty of shopping happening already. But we will have space for the speakers to sell their books too, like in the atrium, like if you want to connect them. But yeah, so some of the speakers include Joshua Cutchin, Timothy Renner, the 3 Appalachian Witches, Aaron Taylor, Victoria J. I'm speaking. Yeah, so we got some pretty stellar people coming to present their research and their findings. We had a very strict process. We actually had people submit abstracts to present. So a very short 500-word summary on what they were presenting. And then we actually had a rubric and a selection committee. So There was definitely a lot of work that went into like, hey, where are we choosing the most effective, presentations, and hopefully we'll have a journal too available in December, which will include papers of all the presenters, and their work and what they did at the symposium.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it does. I like that idea too of like, because that was one of the things when we need to go to more. Our plan this summer was like, we're going to do a whole bunch of conferences and cons and stuff. And we did 0. We did none. And it's embarrassing because we actually haven't been to Gettysburg yet, even though we're not that far away.
Yeah.
So it's something we need to start getting some of these things on our calendar.
Yeah.
But that sounds like a great idea because I know a lot of the ones we've been at, that's typically what happens, especially if you're a vendor, you kind of get stuck at the table and you're not able to check those things out. So to be able to go and not have to worry about that sounds like an absolutely fantastic time to be able to do it without having to feel like you need to be nailed down to your table.
Yeah. And we're exploring possibly if we do this again next year, maybe doing tables. But at the same time, I'm like, well, this is more of an academic conference. So it's like, and we figured if there's speakers who really do want to sell their books, like we booked space in the atrium at the Gettysburg Hotel. And plus we have 30 minutes in between each presentation. So it's like, okay, well, there's going to be, and plus a lunch break. So it's like, okay, I think we're giving people enough time. To meet and work and collaborate with each other and have discussions. So yeah. Excellent. We'll see how it goes. It might be a hot mess, but hopefully it'll be a fun hot mess.
Well, anytime you do something new for the first time, there's going to be kinks you got to work out, but
absolutely.
It sounds really awesome.
Thank you. But yeah. And then the other thing I have coming up is I have a new book coming out in September, Haunted Northern Virginia. When I moved to the area, the way that I learned the history and learned about the places around me was to look up the ghost stories.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of books on hauntings in Washington, D.C., but there was like little to nothing for Northern Virginia besides maybe Manassas. And I was like, yeah, there's an opportunity here. I want to explore this further. So that's coming out in September from the History Press.
Awesome.
Yeah. Bull Run and all the, one thing we do not lack in Virginia is the Civil War battlefields.
Yeah.
So many battlefields.
Can throw a stone and hit one.
Yep.
Well, like literally, pretty much
like
if you
two
live
in our
in
neighborhood.
Yeah.
Nice.
So if you live in Virginia, you're a stone's throw away from a battlefield essentially. So, and we've had that's been one of the places where we have had a lot of evidence. Like it's really easy to get evidence at battlefields. So yeah, we got a cannon. Me and Jenny were just walking through the battlefield in the day, like doing some EVP recordings. Didn't hear it with our own ears, although you were having a conversation.
Yeah.
And then we went back
and I felt it reverberate in my chest. And then in the EVP, it was like about 10 seconds later, you could hear it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And then, I went and checked out. I was like trying to find like different cannons being fired off that kind of matched the sound. And it was Civil War era artillery.
Of course.
There we go.
Nice. Oh, that's exciting when you get data like that too. It's like, ooh. Yeah.
Nice stuff everywhere, man.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I tell people when you start to do paranormal. It's like, oh well, look, like you don't have to go to the shut down asylum, and you don't have to go to the cemetery, and if you get spooked easy, maybe don't do it in your own house. Go somewhere else to do it.
Yeah.
But it's not that hard to get started with it. But thank you so much for being on the show tonight, Alex. We're getting close to the 10 o'clock mark here. Yeah. We really enjoyed having you on, and there's so much more I wanted to talk to you about, but always we made this show extremely long, so we have plenty of time, and we still always run out of time.
We always run out of time.
Nice.
If you want to hang on for a moment, we can talk to you once we get off air. So I want to tell everybody thank you for tuning in tonight. Thank you for all of the comments and questions we had in chat tonight. If you're listening to us later, wherever you're listening to us at, if you're listening to us on YouTube, make sure you just click a like and sub if you haven't. And if you're listening on iHeartRadio or Apple Podcasts or any of those places, you can follow us there. And if you leave us a quick review, it helps people discover the podcast so we can have more wonderful guests on to talk about all things paranormal. Do you have anything else tonight, Jenny, before we head out?
I just want to thank Priestess of Wonderland for coming on to do the moon update.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm so glad that we were able to have Alex on.
Thanks for having me.
So real quick, before we move on to the end here, we have no show next week.
Because our daughter's in a theater production, actually.
Yeah. She's going to be the spider in James and the Giant Peach. And so no show next week. We'll be back on the 25th with Jacqueline Kenner. We're going to talk about, the secret. We're going to talk about mediumship. We're possibly going to get into secret space program, all kinds of things we're going to talk about 2 weeks from today. And then on August 1st, we're going to have Martin Rivera on. We're going to talk about QHHT.
Finally, I'm so excited.
Which I know you're excited about. We're going to have Dr. Mona Sabani on the 8th. She is a neuroscientist who has written a book about the crossover between what she does as a doctor and the afterlife and paranormal field. And on the 15th of August, we are going to have Allie Cardinale on the show. And we're going to talk about witch doctors and all kinds of magic on the 15th. So lots coming your way on the witching hours. Once again, thank you to everyone for hanging out tonight. We appreciate you so much. And we will, for all the people listening on the podcast, we will see you all next time. And for everyone who's still hanging out with us here in chat on Twitch, we are going to go raid. Go find someone to raid over on the Twitch TV. Who do we got tonight? Oh, we got Weird Paul on. We have Muso Patty Savage.
Savage is doing tarot.
Yeah.
And Ex Novia is doing tarot. Mystic Village is doing ASMR. You know, we always like to screw him up when we go in there. It's whispering.
Yes.
Hi, Sophie.
Let's go raid Ex Novia.
Okay.
Raid Ex Novia. All right.
All right, everybody. I'll see you guys tomorrow night.
Yep. Take care. We'll see you all tomorrow for the Friday night reading night. Take care. And we will see you all next time.
Oh, I was trying to put thank you, Alex.